Hi everyone, it's Marianne. Welcome to my Bookbinding 101 series where I share with you everything you need to know on how to bookbind fics for the first time. And I've shared with you how to create a typeset in MS Word and how to create a text block. And now I'm going to share with you how to create a bookcase. In this video, we're going to cover measurements for your bookcase, how to assemble it together, covering the book with a book cloth or a leather patch, and also creating a cover design, and finally casing it in. This is the test case that I created with my test text block, and when I measured it I thought I gave enough overhang, but as you can see it is just right exact. So I'm just gonna cut the excess part of this, like the rounded corners. Maybe eventually I will do a book with a rounded corner, but for now I'm cutting that off and I will still have enough for the width. So I could buy like chipboards from Amazon, but I feel like one, they're expensive, second, I don't really know which one to get, and I don't know the quality of it. This one I saw on the dollar store, it's $1.25. I got two, which for me is still like reasonable because it's pretty much, if you do the cost per unit, the ones you can buy on Amazon, it's pretty much like almost $1 per chipboard, although this one is a bit smaller. And because I don't have a guillotine and I kind of like want to cut this straight, I'm using my Cricut cutter to like just give it an initial cut. And I know this one is not going to cut it all the way through, but it's just like to give it, again, that initial line that I could follow later with my X-Acto knife and a ruler. Others have used their actual Cricut machines to cut the chipboard, but it's going to take a lot of settings on my Cricut. I feel like this one is just more faster and less frustrating. Since I haven't used my Cricut in a while, it's going to also take me a while to figure out how to do that. This one is a bit faster. This cutting board I also got from the dollar store. It is a bit small, does the job for now. I'm using my Cricut X-Acto knife. There's probably like better X-Acto knives out there, but this one also works for me. Like again, I am not measuring anything yet. I am just cutting out the rounded corners. So it's gonna take a while, so I'll be right back. So I finished cutting the chipboards. This is the spine. This is 6.7 centimeters. The actual length of my spine is 6.4 centimeters. I added 3 more millimeters, which made it 3.7. And then for the book cover, I kept the height of the chipboard that I used, which is 22.8 centimeters. And I haven't cut the width yet because, as I mentioned earlier, I want to make sure after I kind of like assemble it that it covers the entire text block before I cut the width. I don't want to make the same mistake because this is kind of hard to cut. And then the cardboard that is going to kind of like hold everything together. So there's not really exact size to this. I think it depends on the size of the spine. The size of my spine times 3. And I just make sure that there's a 1 cm space after the spine. So that will be for the hinge. And I just made markers on the cardboard on where I'm supposed to glue. So for the spine, I'm only gluing it here, but I'm not putting any glue here. I am gluing the book cover here, but just up to the edge of the hinge, so I can still have that like 1 cm gap for the hinge. So honestly, figuring out these measurements was, I feel like, a bit more hassle than it's supposed to be, because every tutorial I look at, it says, oh, it's based on your preference, measurement of your book, blah blah blah. But I feel like we're all making the same size book. The only difference is the size of the spine, depending on how thick the text block is. So I feel like the only thing that should be changing really in measurement is the width of the spine, and everything else should be constant. So I'm not sure why like all the tutorials are giving formulas instead of like actual measurements, since we're all making the same size books. But I'll share with you my measurements and see if it actually also works out with you, because I feel like now that I figure out my measurements, it's the same one that I'm going to use for future books, unless I discover otherwise when I make my second or third book. But I feel like the only thing that should change is the spine width. Everything else should be constant. I'm gonna put some on the board too. The only thing that I don't like about this glue is it dries so fast, which is supposed to be a good thing, but for me, I don't like it. And luckily, the book cover that I am using is a peel and stick, so I don't have to worry about adhesive for that one. This works really well Like, I got no complaints when it comes to its adhesion. It's just, for me, it's not the easiest to work with. And it also stinks. It's not really good to inhale. And I'm supposed to be wearing a mask right now, but I'm not. And when I was also cutting the chipboards, I was wearing a mask because it was like a lot of dust. Okay, so I am gluing it here. Glue spine here. Okay, and then turning over. Some do bone in the hinge. So let me try doing that. Do this before I actually measured the hinge gap, because it's going to be hard to measure it because the measurements are going to change. So that's why I think some, after they do that, instead of doing 1 centimeter, they just do 0.8 or 0.7 centimeters, because that's the 0.2 is the height of the chipboard. This one works really well. I feel like I don't really need a bone folder. And you do use a bone folder a lot, so I feel like that's why people think it's one of those supplies that is worth investing in. And it probably is, but this one honestly works just as fine from the dollar store. And honestly, writing all this down, where to glue, helps a lot. It might seem unnecessary, but especially if you're doing it for the first time and you don't want to, well, you want to minimize the mistakes that you're making. That helps so much. After I do the thingy, the gap left is 3.7 millimeters, which is the exact gap that I want. And I'm just also going to glue the other cover page, and just important to remember not to put glue on the hinge, just at the right edge of it, and also glue the cover board right by that line. Now I'm taking my text block, and then, so see, I want to make sure it has enough overhang. That's why I didn't cut right away, because if I cut right away and it's a lot shorter, then I have to recut, and I don't want to do that. So the best way I found to do this is to trace the text block on the cover board, and I just use a pencil just in case I accidentally write on the text block. And then I measure another 5 millimeters or half a centimeter from that edge of the text block, and that's where I'm gonna cut. So the width ended up being 14.3, which is a common number that I see in bookbinding tutorials. But I guess they're explaining how they came up with the numbers. But I feel like your book cover width is 14.3 if you have a 1 cm hinge. And I get it, everything is up to preference, but for beginners, if you want a set number to follow and then just figure out your preference later, here are the numbers on screen. Okay, so I have finished cutting it, and let's see if this actually worked. Yeah, just about. Okay, so for the book cover, instead of using a book cloth, I'm using a peel and stick wallpaper because I really like this color and this pattern, and I got it for free. It was sent to me as a free sample on Amazon. I also have like a leather patch that I'm excited to use, but it's in red and I want this one in green. The measurement for this is basically the entire length and width of the bookcase, plus giving it a ruler width gap all around so that when you fold it in, it will be uniformed. Okay, so the thing about the peel and stick is it already has adhesive, so I don't have to worry about it, but I can't peel the entire thing off right away. All right, maybe third time's the charm. If not, I will have to come up with something else because this is getting ridiculous. The peel and stick wallpaper didn't work out as I thought it would. I ended up using the leather patch that I had, which was actually a lot easier to use, and it was also self-adhesive. But I'm showing you my third attempt at the wallpaper to show you the steps of wrapping the bookcase. It is pretty much the same step. The only thing that's different is I didn't have to peel it from the middle. I just peeled it from the edge with the leather patch, and it worked fine. After I got the bookcase to adhere to the wall and stick wallpaper, I cut off the corners using this bookbinding ruler, If you want it, it's in my Amazon storefront, but basically I'm just leaving a few millimeters before I cut it at a 45-degree angle. And this is important when you are wrapping the bookcase, is to do the top and bottom first before you do the sides. And when you do the sides, make sure you tuck in the corners first before folding in the sides, so that you could have that neat and very clean corners in your bookcase. And just when I thought this peel and stick wallpaper is finally working out for me, I tried to sharpen the hinge and it ripped. Okay, so I have finished putting the book cover on. I switched to using a leather patch that I got. The wallpaper just wasn't working, and I didn't film it because I feel like I need to just concentrate doing it without having to worry about camera angles and recording and stuff. So it worked out pretty perfectly, and I think using like a leather patch is very beginner friendly. I don't have to worry about it bubbling like I did with the peel and stick wallpaper, and I also don't worry about adhesive seeping. I feel like that's gonna be an issue if I use a book cloth for the first time. So highly recommend doing a leather patch. And I've also started putting the design on it, and I used my Cricut for it. I didn't record that part because I think like Cricut is a whole other beast, and there's a lot of like tutorials on how to use a Cricut. For me personally, I kind of had to relearn it because I haven't used it in a long time, so it was very frustrating. But if you're curious, yes, the vinyl goes very easily on the leather patch. This is actually adhesive foil, but basically works the same as a vinyl. I'm about to add the cover page so I can show you that, but it adds on very easily. The hard part is getting the adhesive foil in the transfer paper, but I think it's just because my transfer paper doesn't have enough strong enough grip, plus the design that I'm using is a little bit small and intricate, but I really like the way it looks. As you can see here in the spine, if you look too hard you'll see the mistakes, but so far it's okay. And also a tip would be like to make sure that your transfer paper is the size of the book cover, so that you can like make sure it's properly aligned when you put it on. And once I have aligned the transfer tape, I'm just using my bone folder to transfer the adhesive foil to the bookcase. And honestly, this was relatively easy, but I did go back and forth a few times just to make sure it adheres, because the design is a bit intricate. I don't want it to come off easily, so I was going back and forth a little bit, but honestly I didn't really need to do that. I probably just needed to like do once and let the book press later on do its job. Now that I actually put the book cover, it's very important that it's on the right side, and make sure it's like, so that's why at the end paper I kind of indicated this is the top, this is the bottom, and just double checking. It's important to have something underneath the end paper. This is kind of like an iPad screen that I'm not using, and some people put parchment paper. That works as well. You just don't want the glue to seep into the other side of the end paper. So, and I just want to make sure that the book is positioned correctly. After I make sure that there are equal gaps top, bottom, and side, I started putting glue on the end pages, and I'm making sure that I have glue all throughout the edge. And one thing that I hope I concentrated a little bit more was on the other edge that's closer to the spine of the book. I didn't really do much there because I was kind of like scared to glue the spine in, because another important thing, you're not supposed to put glue on the spine, but I could definitely put a lot more glue on the end paper itself closer to the spine. And after I have placed glue all over the end page, I take the book cover and fold it on top of the end page. And then I do the same thing on the other side, put glue on the end page all over. Be very generous with the glue, because this is what's going to hold your text block together with the bookcase. And once I have spread glue all over the end paper, same thing, I'm going to take the book cover and flip it over on top of the end page. And with this, you just have to be patient. I kind of lost it at first. I kind of want to clean up the messes right away, but it's just important to let the end pages stick to the book cover first and just let it dry and completely adhere. And if needed, use the book press to do it. I definitely needed to use a book press. I did cover the cover pages because I don't want to mess it up, and just use a book press for at least 2 hours to overnight before checking it again. And this time, do not press the hinge. And I'm basically done with my first book. I finished my first book bind, and unless I wanted to add more design to the cover, but I'm pretty much done with that. So here it is. So this is my first book bind, The Right Thing to Do and All the Wrong Things. It's actually 2 fixed in 1. I've always wanted to do a tandem read of both because The Right Thing to Do is on Hermione's POV, but in 3rd person, and All the Wrong Things is in Draco's POV. So it took a bit of work when doing the typeset, but I think it's worth it, and it makes the book binding worth it because I tend to just read things online, but having this like physically with the tandem read figured out makes like it worth it, especially for a first book bind. And I ended up using a leather patch for the book cover. I originally wanted to use a film stick wallpaper. As you saw, it didn't work out. And then for the cover art, I used adhesive foil, which is different from like the foil that most book binders use, and it's more similar to vinyl. And I designed it on Canva and cut it on my Cricut. Like I said, unless you stare at it really hard, you're not gonna see the mistakes, but we'll see. So I'm thinking of maybe doing an art here maybe, and maybe here we will see. I am going to bind the auction. It's kind of like the alternate version or the alternate universe of The Right Thing to Do and All the Wrong Things. So it's going to be the same size, and once I figure that out, maybe I'll do a design that kind of like complements and ties in both, but it's going to be like almost the same exact bind. And just like and summary, and then chapter 1. And then the typeset, this probably took me the longest and what made me hesitate getting to book binding, because typesets it was going to be the hardest to do. But once I figured it out, doing the typeset is actually the most enjoyable and most creative part for me. This one I did shave down because it wasn't really too bad, and maybe I could sand it down next time, but unless I'm trying to like paint the edges, which I'm not there yet, I don't really see the need to. But yeah, so next is the auction. And reached the end of my Bookbinding 101 series. I've shared with you everything that I know on how to bind your fic for the first time, and this is my very first bind, The Right Thing to Do and All the Wrong Things by Julie Soto, and I am very proud of this. There might have been some mistakes along the way, but I love how it turned out generally, and I'm very proud of it. And I'm going to continue bookbinding. The next one I'll be binding is the auction, so I might do videos on that as well. Probably not as comprehensive as my Bookbinding 101 series, but just a video on how I created the books, things that I've learned from my first book bind, and the improvements that I've made, hopefully in my next bookbinding. So if you want to join me on that as well, make sure you're subscribed to my channel. And aside from bookbinding, I also do videos on home and garden, and also share with you other hobbies that I'm be taking up in 2024 and share what I learned with you. So if you do like that type of content, please make sure to subscribe to this channel. And if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and comment down below. And until next time, I see you, I appreciate you, take care of yourself and each other, and have a plentiful and bookful day. Bye!